Bleh.
Hey dorks, I am back from being married. Now let's talk about what's wrong with Man of Steel. So if you're new to what's wrong with, general premise here is we tell you everything we hate about the shit that we love. Now I saw Man of Steel opening night, loved the movie, and now it's time to tell you what's terrible about it. So I'm going to try and be as spoiler-free as I possibly can. Little itty-bitty spoiler warning right here at the beginning. There will be some plot revelations. There won't be anything too big, i.e. anything that you can't find with a little bit of snooping. So my first problem with Man of Steel is overshare in the trailers. Now this tends to be a problem in comic book movies in general, but because of the trailers for this movie, you already sort of feel like you know everything that happens in the first half hour or so of this movie. And unfortunately, the first half hour or so is where this movie really excels. Everything you see in the trailers that you think is going to be this movie, all the really cool storylines and the backstory and Krypton and how Superman got here, or Kal-El, I guess I should call him Kal-El. He's not Superman. He's Kal-El. Kal-El. All that shit happens in the first 30 minutes, and the rest of the movie, once it gets into the second act, for all you film structure nerds. Are there any film structure nerds? I might be the only film structure nerd. So back to the point, once the second act in this film happens, the movie changes quite a bit. So our transition into the second act of this film is Kal-El finding out about his Krypton past. And that's no spoiler there. I assume if you know anything about Superman, you know that that has to happen at some point in this movie. It happens about 30 minutes in. Kal-El, surprisingly no problem with his Krypton past. He just sort of goes with it. He's told by his father, played by Russell Crowe, or rather like his father's computer simulation soul thingy in a ship. It's weird. That he's got to be this Superman and he's an alien and blah blah. And it just completely doesn't faze him. He's just like, alright, yeah, let's do that. So another thing that's kind of cool, but also sort of problematic about this movie is the way the narrative structure is put together. So you find out about Kal-El's past through a series of flashbacks that are interspersed mostly through the first and second acts of the film. Now while that is a really cool way to do it, there were one or two times that you learned something after the fact that it would have been the most emotionally stimulating. So you sort of have to do this double. It's not a normal movie structure. I'm not necessarily saying it's a bad thing. I'm saying that it's less impactful the way they do it emotionally. Now we can have an argument about if we think it's better intellectually, but I'm just saying from my point of view, the way they chose to do it, while very cool, did take away a little bit from the emotional experience of the film. Another problem I've got with this movie is that there were points where it was like super sappy. And I would expect that from like a normal Superman movie, but the trailers for this film, again, it's a trailer problem, back to the trailers. The trailers for this movie set it up to be something different. It set it up to be like this sort of realistic, gritty, raw thing, but then the performances at times and the writing at times, way too sappy. And probably the character who made it the most sappy would be Kal-El's on-Earth mom. So she was played by Diane Lane. Martha Kent is the character's name. Yeah, at times, way over the top. Another note about performances in this, I want to talk about Michael Shannon as General Zod for 1 minute. So General Zod, in my mind, is supposed to be like a super duper memorable character. And Michael Shannon, yeah. And probably part of the reason he never really sells it is because of who his right-hand chick is. Now her name in the film is Faora Ul, I think is how you pronounce it. Even more difficult to pronounce is the name of the actress who actually plays Faora. And her name is Antje Traue. Antje Traue. Despite her terrible name, she actually does give a really stellar performance, and that would not be a problem if it weren't for the fact that it's better than Michael Shannon's, and since she's alongside Michael Shannon for most of the film, it detracts from his performance even more than in the lackluster acting skills. So you walk away from the movie sort of loving her as the villain and forgetting him, and I don't think that's what Zack Snyder and team were going for. So I want to go back to a point that we started on earlier about how the second act of this film really changes it into something completely different. So when you watch the trailers for this film, you assume that it's going to be this really realistic sort of look at how Kal-El became Superman. And it is that for the first half hour, but I want to talk about the rest of the movie. Oh my god, what an action fuckfest. Now, I'm not saying action is a bad thing. I'm saying don't show me that a movie is going to be something and then turn it into something completely different. And that's exactly what this movie does. That being said, some of the action sequences in this film were really, really great. Especially in the fight scenes. Some really, really sometimes gratuitous, but always awesome fight scenes in Man of Steel. But when you go in there opening night, again, it may be different if you're like watching reviews or reading reviews before you go, because you'll already sort of know that that's how this film's going to be. But if you're going in there like I am opening night, or you're just going there as a blind viewer and just checking out the film, it's going to take you by surprise. It's going to be a big departure. So there's that. The third act of the film introduces us to a lot of NCIS dialogue. There's just a lot of shit being said that doesn't really make sense by characters that would not know or be privy to certain knowledge. A lot of things are convenient. Like there's one part where Lois Lane is taken aboard General Zod's ship along with Kal-El per General Zod's request. And so you think, okay, Zod knows about Lois Lane and he's going to use that to his advantage. Or at the very least, you think that there's some motivation for Zod wanting Lois Lane on that ship. Turns out, no. General Zod has no motivation for wanting her on the ship. It's not even addressed. The only reason Lois Lane is on the ship is so that she can help Kal-El get out of a sticky situation with the help of Russell Crowe. And there are a few more of those, some tied to spoilers or, big spoilers, so I won't really go into it, but there are more. While we're talking about Lois Lane a little bit, I just want to say that I've never really liked Amy Adams. I think I'm sort of in the minority here. I think most people like Amy Adams. I do not like Amy Adams. I think the only time I've ever enjoyed Amy Adams in anything is in Tenacious D and The Pick of Destiny. Yeah, she's in that movie. When they play Master Exploder, she's in the fucking crowd, and she gets all headbangy and raunchy, and that's pretty much it. And as Lois Lane, Amy Adams is alright. I mean, Lois Lane, the way she's written in this movie is pretty generic. Anybody could pull her off, so good job on being a generic character, Amy Adams. But apart from that, apart from Lois Lane just being played decently by Amy Adams, the relationship between Lois Lane and Kal-El is super forced. I sort of felt a problem with the way Kal-El was portrayed once he sort of took over the Superman role. It wasn't necessarily with Henry Cavill or how he played it. It was with the writing. So Superman is like the quintessential American superhero. So when you go into a Superman film, you expect to see that. And you do see that in this film. The way this film is structured, the primary conflict is a philosophical one, which is really interesting to me. And the conflict is, should a lesser advanced, sort of primitive civilization be slain for the advancement and continued prosperity and even the existence of a more powerful, more intellectually diverse, more advanced civilization? So essentially the question that Man of Steel asks is, primitives that are natives or aliens that are more advanced? And the answer given by Superman is the primitives. But Superman is also the quintessential American, so immediately in my mind I'm like, yeah, in America we would never, ever destroy a primitive civilization for the existence or the advancement of an advanced civilization. That's just not the American way. As a random side note too, I just want to mention that there is a death in this movie. It's sort of a minor spoiler. I won't tell you who it is, but someone dies in a tornado incident, and literally they are standing right next to the tornado like a fucking statue. Literally, they're like cars and debris and hay bales blowing all over the place, and Kal-El is in a position to save this person who is about to die, but this person is just all like, no, he's cool. I'm alright. And then tornado engulfs this person and kills it. It's just ridiculous that they're standing like right next to a tornado that 5 seconds later will kill them, and they're just fucking fine, not moving at all. Everything's cool. So there you go. Man of Steel, 30 minutes of it is what you think it's going to be. The rest of it is something completely different. Performances are mostly boring, except for one or two. A lot of shit's convenient. That's what's wrong with Man of Steel. I've been Joel from DorkJuice.com. Please do watch the previous What's Wrong With video on Star Trek Into Darkness. Also, coming up next on What's Wrong With, yeah, we know what's coming next, because we can plan and shit, because we're that fucking good. What's coming up next on the What's Wrong With series is something super cool that I've been wanting to do for a long time, and it is What's Wrong With World of Warcraft. So this is going to be like a multi-part series. We're going to be covering everything we can about World of Warcraft. I'm also pleased to announce that we will be bringing in a special guest from DorkJuice.com who has not done videos before, so you'll be meeting her very soon. So please do check back in with this channel for those videos. Please do subscribe to the DorkJuice channel here on the YouTube. Also, you can find DorkJuice on Twitter at DorkJuice Tweets, on Facebook at just DorkJuice, on Google Plus at DorkJuice. Also, please do check out the Dork Pod. That is the DorkJuice.com podcast in case you're retarded and couldn't figure that out. I am one of 3 of the guys on the Dork Pod. It is all movies, all the time on the Dork Pod. You can find that on iTunes in the link below. Once again, guys, glad to be back from the wedding. Glad to be doing What's Wrong With again. Can't fucking wait to get started on World of Warcraft. I've been Joel from DorkJuice.com. See you next time.